Let's do a sound check. Is the sound working?
Yeah.
Did you get a thumbs up from somebody? You can. Just before I start.
Yes.
Awesome, thank you. All right, I'm calling this meeting to order. This is the, what day is it? October 27th, 2022, meeting of the Twin Cities Urban Immersion School Board. As always, we like to start with our mission, vision, and values. And tonight, Executive Director Christensen will say those for us.
Our mission is innovative education of the whole child through German immersion. Our vision is andere hören, andere sehen, weltoffen denken und handeln. Educating multilingual world citizens who hear others, see others, and think and act with an open mind. And our values are curiosity, kindness, challenge and support, community, and intercultural engagement.
Great, thank you. And Yulia, can we conduct the roll call, please?
Yes. Director Albers.
Here.
Director Alcatuch.
Here.
Director Dayton.
Here.
Director Eberhardt.
Here.
Director Hartmann.
Here.
Director Heit.
Here.
Director Kreuzinger.
Here.
Director Quan Dobbs.
Here.
Director Müller.
Here.
Director Reich.
Here.
And Director Tesfa Jesus.
Here.
And ex-official member, Executive Director Christensen.
Here.
Excellent. It's fun to have everyone here tonight. Tonight, we welcome the St. Paul City Council President, Amy Brenmoen, to our meeting. She is also a neighbor directly across the street from TCGIS, and she has agreed to come and conduct the oath of office for two of our board members. So welcome, Amy. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. It's nice to have these evening gigs when it's across the street from my house. I don't know if this is the best place to stand, but
Up in the middle a little bit more than, yep. Perfect.
So it is wonderful, and it's a privilege and an honor for me to live across from the school. I feel like I get to be part of the energy that rolls in the morning and rolls out in the afternoons and sometimes carries forth in the evening. I know that together we've been through some tumultuous times, but it really feels like we've hit our stride, and it's a nice amenity to have such a fine institution in our neighborhood. I have been invited to read the oath of office. Probably this is about the fourth time I've done this. And I am always pleased to get the invitation because serving on a board should be elevated. And I think that really that's the intention here, is to just, you're pledging an oath to serve the school, to serve the community, to serve the staff, to serve the students. And we're really looking to you for your leadership and your wisdom. And so taking a moment to pause and just want to thank all of you for your service. I've been serving in office for 11 years, and I think every day when I walk into the city hall in downtown, I kind of stop and think that I'm here to serve. And it's an important role, and you have a big responsibility. So I thank you all for stepping up to do this. So today we are going to read the oath of office for Hubert and for Jennifer. And we'll do it together, unless you are opposed to that. And then after we're done reading the oath, I will have you sign this as well as the board chair, and then you'll have this to frame and put over your fireplace. But yeah, so why don't we'll do that today. But I thank you all for your service as well. Today we're going to focus in on the two of you.
How about you both stand and come on this side,
So
maybe?
people can see.
Yeah, we can do this so that it's taped for eternity. It's a big deal. All right, so Jennifer and Hubert, please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I solemnly swear that I will support the constitutions of the United States
the constitutions of the United States
and the state of Minnesota,
and the state of Minnesota,
and that I will faithfully discharge that I
that
will
I
faithfully
will discharge
the duties of the office
the duties of the office
of the Board of Directors
Board of Directors.
of the Twin Cities German Immersion School.
of the Twin Cities German Immersion School.
I understand that having taken the foregoing oath,
I understand that having taken the foregoing oath,
I hereby signify my acceptance
I hereby signify my acceptance
of the office
of the office
and its legal and moral obligations.
and its legal and moral obligations.
Congratulations and thank you. Jennifer?
Thank you very much.
Excellent.
Yeah.
So I was hoping we could get a group photo. So if the whole board could come on this side of the tables. I'll just take a moment for a group photo.
Yes,
But they haven't signed yet.
yes, I know. Julie, bring your pen.
Just sign them
Bring
first.
your pen.
Yeah, you better.
You too.
Yeah, this is.
Lovely seeing for her.
Three girls together.
Oh, sure.
Hey, but you two are gonna get done.
Yeah, maybe hold them sideways.
Well, the tall ones in the back. Emily.
We need to crunch up a little. Are you saying?
Yeah, just a little bit.
They're making it official.
I know, yeah.
Trying to be official here.
Yeah, you don't want to have that picture in that.
I
Did
know.
they really? I don't
What I
know.
was worried about.
So.
How much more do we need?
That's perfect.
That work?
Did it happen? Perfect.
Anka,
Thank you.
thank you so much.
Look at you. Everything's. You can hide it.
All right, rock on, do good things, board members.
Thanks,
because I didn't take care of myself when I was younger.
Oh.
I gotta do it now that I'm old.
Oh, okay.
I'm here. So we never got to it, so I was, you know.
All right, very good. So the next item on the agenda is the consent agenda. Did anyone have any edits to the board meeting minutes from the last meeting? And does anyone have any edits to the agenda for tonight?
Just the order of things, but that doesn't really matter, right?
That doesn't matter. All right, I'll ask for unanimous consent to approve the consent agenda. Any objections? Agenda is approved. All right. So in the packet, we had two letters that we responded to. One is from the band instructor who gives band musical lessons using one of our rooms during the day and after school. And the other was from a parent. That was a long time ago. Yeah, so please look at those letters and the responses. And that brings us to open forum for tonight's meeting. We don't have anyone present for the general open forum,
Is there anyone online?
so. we're just doing it in person.
Oh,
All right, so we'll close the open forum portion of the meeting tonight. I think I'm going to move the teacher union update ahead of the audit presentation, if that's okay. Without objection. Okay. Scott Stevenson. We have you on the agenda to address the board about a teacher union update.
First, let me thank you on behalf of myself and the teachers for your service. I'm sure you're aware, but many years ago, I was also a board member. And looking forward to being to go home after my address to you. And I didn't have, remember the later nights. So thank you very much for your service there. And I am also the teachers union president. You have one more number.
I've read it.
You have none? Yeah. And I'm speaking to you today as a teachers union president. So dear TCGIS board, we are excited to go into another school year with our students and to focus our energy on creating an exceptional educational experience. We value the relationships that exist between staff, administrators, students, and their caregivers, and we are truly a school community. As educators and union members, we are always looking for ways to improve collaboration. That is why we are coming to you today with a proposal related to how our two unions, the TCGIS teachers and education support professionals, interact with the school board. We believe that it would be in the best interest of all parties if our two union chapters were to combine into one union chapter with one contract. As teachers and education support professionals, we already work closely together every day. We have common goals and interests. Additionally, we can see the following benefits. Bargaining one contract will reduce the time commitment and legal fees during negotiations. Both contracts already have similar language, and creating separate pay scales is common in union contracts. A singular union chapter will create more streamlined and inclusive communications between staff groups and administration. Both chapters will be able to draw from a larger combined pool for leadership positions. We are coming to you as a board to ask that you voluntarily choose to honor this request. Education Minnesota attorneys have examined the issue and determined that as both chapters have voted to merge, it would be sufficient for the school board to recognize our request. We understand that you may need some time to discuss and ask questions. We hope that a decision from you could be made by the end of the November 30th board meeting. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Does anyone have any questions for Scott?
Yes.
Did the EA negotiations start already?
Nope,
No, when is that?
it was supposed to have been.
It should have been EA negotiations could have started last January, I believe, and have not started yet.
Okay.
Similar to the teachers' contracts, they have an evergreen clause so that if a contract period would end and a new contract hadn't been negotiated, the existing contract just continues until that. And we would be willing to start combined negotiation fairly soon. As normally we would be starting the teacher negotiations next January. But we'd be willing to like
Next January as in,
2023.
okay.
Yeah.
And so I'm assuming that since the ESP part or union hasn't started their negotiations yet, they're fine.
Yeah, they're,
Until-
yeah, both unions have voted to merge and are both willing to combine and do one negotiation for a combined contract.
Okay, so even if we vote on this at the November 30th meeting. I mean, with the holidays and everything, it probably won't be starting until normal.
Probably not,
Teachers.
but it would definitely. Without that, you could be in the position of negotiating the teacher's contract at the same time as negotiating the EA contract, which I would not want to do.
Yeah, I'm just trying to get a sense of the timing of it all.
Yeah.
But thank you, that answers my question.
Dr. Miller?
Yeah, this sounds to me very rational. And do you see any negative or any considerations that kind of would speak against it?
And obviously, when we're presenting the idea to our membership, we said, well, here's the pros and here's the cons. And some of the cons are, if we're just the teachers union focusing on our negotiations, before negotiations, we always say, hey, everybody, what do you want? We're not going to get everything. We've got to know where are your priorities. so that we can do the horse trading that always happens towards the end of negotiations. And if we were just a teachers union, we can focus just on what is best for the teachers. And if we're combined, we will be obligated to focus on what is best for all of us. And the same thing, if the EAs were to stay by themselves, they could focus on what is the best that we can get just for the EAs, and let the teachers fund for themselves. Which in my opinion was, it's a valid argument. It's not an argument I would take, but if somebody were to take that, I can't say, that's a horrible position. Looking at the legal side of things, as I said, Education Minnesota, since we're actually one union and we are different chapters of the same union. So it's merging chapters isn't as large a deal as merging two separate unions, because we already are two chapters of the same union.
Thank you.
Yes.
Is it appropriate to ask how the vote was going?
Yes, the EA union voted 100% to merge,
Okay.
2-0. And the teacher union voted 20-3.
Okay. So it's pretty outside.
I really like this last bullet point, the be able to draw from a larger combined pool for leadership positions, and I don't know if it's the board's place to voice concern here, but will there be any language or anything to ensure that both teachers and EAs have representation in that leadership?
We've discussed that, because that would be another con, is in a merged union, one or the other, most likely the teachers would have the lion's share of membership, and also say, well, we're going to focus on teachers because that's us. And one way to get around that would be to have in our new bylaws that would be creating, say, somebody must be from the EAs in the leadership positions, which could put us in a very similar situation where now there's 2 EAs that are currently in the union. There were several more last year, but a lot of those became teachers and are now in the teachers union. And that's a very common thing, that our EAs are here as EAs for a while and then become teachers. So the danger of saying that we've got to have some officers from the EA union would be to say, okay, you know, 2 or 3 or hopefully more, somebody's got to step in and take one of these positions when they might not be ready to, or their family situations might not. But we're very cognizant of the need to, as a combined union, address everybody's needs and not.
Does the EA chapter have its own leadership structure currently?
They do, but so they're Andrew Mangan became the president of the EAs sometime last spring after Hugh Brown left. But now Andrew Mangan is in a position where he has leadership, or not, so supervisory authority over some of the EAs here. So he was no longer eligible to be in the union. So right now, there is no leadership in the EA union, and both of the two, definitely want to be in the union, but like, hey, I've got my family, I've got a lot of stuff. I just can't step up right now to do that.
I'm curious what the potential membership is. Like, what is the % participation in the union?
As I mentioned, last year it was quite a bit higher in the EA unions, but then several of them became teachers. And that's another pro in that if we were together, then we could kind of recruit more. If I had an EA in my class, before when we were split unions, it wasn't really my role to say, hey, you ought to join the EA union because, all of these reasons. But if we were combined, then teachers could develop that relationship and have that conversation. One of the primary reasons cited by EAs for not joining the union is the cost relative to their salary. And even though the dues for EAs are lower than the teacher it's not proportionate to how much an average teacher makes, which is how much an average EA makes. So, and I was talking with David Colvin about that. He said, you know, that's a valid point that we can't really do a lot about, because Education Minnesota says these are the state dues for EAs, these are the state dues for teachers, and we can't say, well, could you please cut that in half when we have more EAs? That's out of it.
And how about for the teacher union? What's the membership?
Teachers unions this year, we've had several of the new hires join. We've been very pleased with that. So I think we might be around 30, 33.
Great.
I'm happy to hear that, you know, you did take that leadership of the representation into consideration with this. If it's not easy or easy enough to have a requirement for EA leadership representation, could we at least require it for negotiation?
Oh, absolutely. I think that would be,
Even if they're not in a leadership position, at least have a representative of
Yeah.
the EAs in the negotiation process.
yeah, definitely. I think that's a really good and valid point, that to actually have the people there. When we assemble negotiation teams, we always try to have somebody from elementary, and somebody from middle school, and somebody from in the special ed area. Because all of them have different perspectives, so. I will check with Education Minnesota, our representative, about how that would be, because again. That might be like forcing somebody, hey, we've got it, you know, so. I'm not sure what would happen if we had that requirement, but then still couldn't find somebody to actually do it. But it's, I think, we definitely want people, EAs on the negotiations team.
Yeah, I'd be curious what they say.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Thank
for
you,
your
Harry
time,
Stevenson.
and I will take my leave.
All right. Have a good evening. All right. Next on the agenda is our audit presentation. Hello, Andrew. Thank you for joining. I think Yulia needs to unmute. There we go. I think we
All
have
right,
20 minutes for the presentation. Hopefully we can get through it.
all right. Would you like me to share the presentation?
Yeah, I think if you could share your screen, that would be great.
All right. So I'll go through the presentation. It definitely won't take me 20 minutes, so it'll leave some time for any questions, comments that you guys may have. I'm Andy Berg with Abdo, the partner on the audit. I'll go through the presentation that will cover some of the financial information, the results of the audit, and give you some peer group comparisons too. So I'll start with our audit opinion, and then we'll look into your general fund results, look at your other governmental funds, it's your food service, community service, and also the building company, and then look at some key performance indicators. So the end result of our audit is that we issue an opinion on your financial statements. We issued a modified opinion or a clean opinion, the best opinion you can get. As part of that, we do gain an understanding of the school's internal controls. We don't issue an opinion on the effectiveness, but if there were any issues that we saw, there potentially could be an internal control finding, but no issues there. As part of the audit, we do test a number of different Minnesota legal compliance areas and issue a report there. Again, a clean report, so completely clean audit. So always fun to present that. So jumping into some of the numbers, this first slide is looking at two different things. It shows your average daily membership or your student numbers indicated by the orange bar. You can see for FY19 through FY21, you're right around that 580. FY22, you jumped up to that 620 range. And then also looking at the general fund expenditures indicated by the black line, and then also those expenditures per ADM indicated by the numbers. So total expenditures fairly consistent over the 5 years presented with a slight increase. Also increasing some in FY 22, which is consistent with the increase in the student numbers, ending at about 12,539 per ADM. If we look at your fund balance compared to your expenditures, here we give you your general fund balance indicated by that lower line, the yellow line with the diamond. We compare that to your general fund expenditures. So we saw those expenditures in the previous graph, total expenditures of about 10.8 million in 2022, up from about 7.1 million in 2021. You do have a fund balance policy where you don't want your fund balance to go below 20 to 25%. You've been in compliance with that policy each of the 5 years presented. At the end of 2022, you're about 32%. Which is down about from 37.6% in 2021, partially due to the increase in expenditures and a slight decrease in fund balance, which we'll look at the next slide. So here we give you a budget to actual for FY 22. The first row is your revenues, followed by the second row, your expenditures, both real close to actual. So the budget was less than a 2% variance, revenues under by about 174,000, expenditures under by about 95,000. So total revenues under expenditures about 166,000. You transferred out about 7,800 to your food service. So total decrease in fund balance of 174,000, ending at about 2.5 million. On this graph, we do give you a little comparison to some peer groups. You'll see this throughout the presentation. We give you two groups, region 11, which is the region you're in, and then also a statewide average. Here, your main revenue source, as you know, is your state sources, which is below both the region 11 and statewide average, consistent to the previous years too. So historically, you've been below. Mainly due probably to the makeup of your students and the special ed students. So now looking at the expenditures over a 3-year period, like we saw in the previous graphs, expenditures did increase in 2022. The makeup fairly consistent between the 3 years presented, with the bulk of it in that black area, the regular instruction, that did increase some, followed by your special education, the light green, which did decrease a little bit in 2022. The next highest area is the sites and building, the light peach on the top. So you'll see a number of these charts, which we've provided previous year. It gives you an indication, a comparison to other charter schools in the state. The orange line is your charter school. We give you an average of the state, which is the yellow line, and then kind of a breakdown in a percentile. So the black portion of that bar is the 25th to 50th percentile. The gray portion is the 51st to 75th percentile. So real consistent in comparison to the peer group over the 4 years presented. And also, like we saw on the previous chart, the expenditures per ADM, pretty consistent with a slight increase. Similar chart, but a breakdown by object for the expenditures. This really just shows you the breakdown, real consistent from each of the 3 years presented, with the bulk of the expenditures being in salary and wages and employee benefits, making up about 66% of total expenditures. So now moving on to the other governmental funds, starting with the food service, giving you a comparison of budget compared to actual. Again, like we saw with the general fund, real close to budget. Revenue came in about 303,000, under budget by about 7,800. Expenditures over budget, total at 310,000, about 14,000 over budget. So revenues under expenditures is 7,800. This is where we saw that transfer in from the general fund covering that small deficit. Most of the revenue funding is federal funding in this fund. If we look at the expenditures per ADM, the comparison, historically been in that the under the 25th percentile. The drop in 2021 is really mainly related to COVID, and then the increase in 2022, you're at right about that 50th percentile compared to other charters. Your community service fund, again, a budget to actual, real close to budget. Revenues came in about 52,000 under, total at 275. Expenditures at 275. So really the programs here generate the revenue. Typically the revenues cover expenditures seen here. So fund balance remain the same. You have about 94,000 sitting in your community service fund. And then if we look at comparison to other charter schools, you're right in line with that 51st to 75th percentile at about 444 per ADM. Again, consistent with the previous years, and really just depending on the type of programs that each school runs through its community service. Now you do have the building company here too, which is really paying the debt on the bonds through the lease revenue coming in, which is paid by your general fund. Total fund balance remained pretty close to 2021 at about just over 1.8 million, which is restricted for under the bond covenants. We do give you a 10-year future principal and interest payments, real consistent and intended to cover by that lease revenue slightly higher than the principal and interest payments. We do give you one bond covenant requirement, your days cash on hand. This graph here shows that you're in compliance. So the minimum cash would be 60 days of your operating expenditures indicated by the orange. So the black portion of the cash is in excess. So always important to monitor the bond requirements and make sure you're in compliance. So now looking at a few more of the key performance indicators. Here we looked at your general fund as a percentage of expenditures on one of the first graphs, which is indicated by the orange, just giving you a comparison to other charter schools following a similar trend, but each of the years you've been slightly higher than the average. And then we pulled out a couple of the specific expenditure areas. The first one here is your regular instruction per ADM. You can see yours was decreasing from 2019 to 2021. With that increase, we saw the total expenditures increase in 2022. Typically right around that 25th percentile compared to other charter schools. And then as I mentioned with the special education, those expenditures did go down and have gone down each of the last 2 years, indicated by the orange line. Back in 2020, you're right at that 50th percentile. In 2022, right in the middle of the 25th to 50th percentile. So with that, I'd be happy to take any questions or comments, discussion.
Thank you, Andrew. Questions about the audit?
Andy, on slide 17, the general fund balances, do we have an idea of why that dropped significantly this year?
So that's a combination of two things. So your expenditures increased in 2022, and then also your fund balance decreased some too. But the biggest factor is that expenditure went up. So we're comparing the ending fund balance to a higher number of expenditures compared to 2021.
Thanks. I also had a question on looking at not the presentation, but the actual audit report. Looking at the numbers, well, I'm trying to find a page to give you a reference, although it doesn't, might not really matter. Yeah, here. I'm on page 19, if you want to look, or you feel like you need to, the revenue and expenses. The revenue and expense. Like line items, well, it all justifies to the same number as our budgets. At the end, they're significantly different. The individual categories are significantly different in some. And I'm just curious why, like what numbers you would be using for the audit versus the budgets that we review at our finance meetings where they would be different.
So the numbers are really the same. I think the biggest difference from page 19 to what you see, page 19 is your government wide, so your full accrual, where on your budget reporting, you're looking more on the modified accrual, so you don't have any of the capital asset depreciation expense. So this is a full accrual, the budget to actual and stuff that I looked at in the slides, and also you go further into the audit. If you go to page 30, that's more in line with the modified accrual. It should be in line with what you're seeing in the finance committee and what's reported to the board.
Yeah, even that, it's like the admin, the line for admin versus, and the line for district support service expenditures and elementary and secondary regular education, they're all significantly different than, you know, the budgets we review on a monthly basis. But
So
like I
that-
said, in the end, the numbers come out the same. I'm just really curious as to why the different categories would be materially different, and then resolve the same. Why you're categorizing things differently than the accounting team would be categorizing them. Does that make
And
sense?
Yeah, I think so. Maybe I'll let Kelly give her thoughts too. I guess without seeing the groupings on the reports, I don't know that I can give you an exact reason why it's different.
Mhm.
But the way we're
Yes.
grouping it is really based on the UFARs, or the uniform reporting to MDE and the categories there. So really it's grouped strictly by the state's account number structure in the financial statements.
Yeah, so the auditors are grouping by the program code, it's called. It's the second set of 3 numbers in the uniform report coding that we use. And we use the object code or the last code in the set of numbers when we're doing our budgeting. So that's truly the only difference.
Okay. I guess I don't know if I understand, and maybe it's a takeaway that we can have with you, Kelly, for one of our future finance meetings or something, kind of explaining
For
the difference.
sure.
I'm just like taking admin costs and district support services, what the audit report shows, you know, equals 820, and then looking at our FY22 budget, you know, if you're not taking into account benefits, it's 725. If you are, it's 897. So it's very materially different. So I don't know. Yeah, so I'm just trying to figure out why, you know, certain of those staff members would be categorized differently by the audit team versus the accounting team.
Yeah, we can definitely talk about that because it's definitely not just staff. It can pull any of our object codes into those different categories. So it's never going to be apples to apples. But we can definitely talk about it, and I can show you the coding structure and we can look at that detail.
Okay, yeah, if we could just like go through the budget and, you know, you could highlight which lines outside of staffing costs and benefit costs would be used in that calculation. Because I guess it sounds like from what you're saying that the admin cost is more than just employee costs.
Yep,
that there's other lines that are included in that in the audit report?
yep.
Okay.
There are. Mhm.
And then we have a grouping that shows all the specific accounts. It'll tie it right out to these numbers, which Kelly and the school have. So that may help you if you're going to dig into some of the details to see how we have it grouped. Like Kelly mentioned, the program versus object code.
Yeah, I guess outside of your audit, yearly audit, is there any way for us to engage with you if we have questions, you know, ahead of going into the next year to be more prepared for your audit, or wanting explanations on certain things? Is there a capacity we can reach out to you for, or is that something we'd have to like negotiate and contract you for?
No, we're always open for you to reach out, questions. If there's anything that was outside of the scope of the audit, we definitely talk to you about that ahead of time. But you know, we definitely want to have conversations throughout the year. So we're open for that.
Great, thank you.
Yes, Director Kurtzenga.
Yeah, just the question I had is kind of answered, but I had two questions. The first one, so there is a reconciliation from the numbers set we look at versus the numbers set in the audit. I take it, right? Kelly?
Yep, so the numbers that we look at do match the audit report, fund financial statements.
But like, I mean, Director Hyde was just saying they don't necessarily match one-to-one, so there has to be some kind of reconciliation.
They're just categorized differently. So like the budget detail lines that we look at are different than how the audit report is detailing the, like, for example, the expenses out.
Okay.
Um,
So it's
but
a
in
classification.
total, it is the same.
Second question I had was you kind of like in your presentation showed a slide on the days cash in hand as a covenant to the bond. But you didn't say anything about the debt service coverage ratio in your presentation. Is there a reason for it?
There's a number of different requirements in the bond documents, and we just pulled the cash one. So
But,
no
I mean,
particular reason.
The
I
critical
did
one,
look at, oh, sorry,
the critical one is the days is a debt service coverage ratio this year, and I was just wondering why that didn't even come up in your presentation yet.
I did ask that in one of my several meetings with the audit team and look back through some historical audits, and it's not a metric that's been included. So.
That's a metric we can add in the future if you would like that in there.
Yeah, I think that would make sense since this year.
Yeah, we can talk, like,
Yeah,
we can definitely talk about that at, you know, the finance committee and see if that's something that we should have added to the audit next year.
another
Yeah, if
minor.
there's specific metrics you want to see, that would discuss, like you said, discuss those in the finance committee and let us know and we can incorporate.
A minor other detail, my name is spelled wrong in the audit report.
Yeah,
I want the umlaut on there.
Yeah, I actually noticed a couple. Just like, I don't know if I'd call them typos or little things like that too. Let me see if I can, I don't really like the PDF reader that I have to use.
So one example is on page 33. 3/4 of the way down the page, it describes the GAI as our authorizer, but that's out of date. But it is correct in the first paragraph that our authorizer is UST, or no, it's wrong in, no. Okay. Yeah, it's out of date.
And then on page 22, the title of the second to last paragraph or section says factors bearing on the school's future. And then it has a dash and says, please provide updates. I don't know if that's supposed to be there or if that's a note on that happened while it was being put together. And then the other one I noticed that's really bothering me because I wrote the sentence is there's a list of contributing factors and it doesn't have an and at the, in between the second to last and last contributing factor. That's in a couple places.
Yeah, so do you, if you want to accumulate all those changes and send them over to us, we can replace the page on those. Like that, please provide updates. That was obviously got missed to delete because we originally provide that. You guys create the MD&A.
Yep.
So any of those, the misspelling of names, the authorizer, any of those other corrections, it'll be super easy for us to correct and get new copies out.
Just a little anecdote, I was an auditor myself once, and we audited a bank in Hamburg. And the president of the bank opened the report and says, like, the only thing I can verify in this report is my name, and that's spelled wrong. So he slapped the whole thing down. And so I think those little things are very important in the audit report still.
Mhm.
Agree.
I have a question about one of the spreadsheets that was sent along with the final reports today. It's the reclassifying journal entries report. Could you just briefly explain what that is showing us? Is this a list of all the items that were reclassified from our budget to the audit?
These are the reclassifying our entries that were either made by the school after we got the original trial balance and we put in, and then the other ones in there are the government wide. So from the fund accounting to the government wide accounting, where you may not enter those in your finance software.
All right,
And
thank
I
you. Any other
can,
questions?
Is there any specific ones on there? I mean, I can open it up and let you know, but that's the big picture piece of it.
Mhm.
I know there was a question on the pension liability. Maybe if you could cover that and why that's included in the government wide, that would be good.
So in the government wide, and this is one of those reclassifying entries. So in the government wide statements, there's a net pension liability of 2.5 million, which is a combination of PERA and TRA. So you do participate in those multi-employer cost sharing pension plans. So every government that participates, so whether it's a city, school, charter school, county, contributes into those plans, and based on those contributions, they calculate your proportionate share, and then you recognize that proportionate share of the total net pension liability of each of those plans. And each of those entities recognize that on their full accrual or government-wide financial statements. Kelly, is that sufficient enough explanation?
Yeah, and just kind of to highlight that the school will never really be responsible to pay for that. And that it was kind of the state's way of balancing their budget, right? So like distribute that liability across all the participating entities.
It's really, I don't know that it's a state, it's really an accounting standard that requires it to be recorded that way. And you're correct. You, charter school will never have to directly pay that. You'll just have to pay in your required contributions through your payroll. And good examples that we've seen some charter schools, close their doors, go to business, and in the end, they don't ever pay that net pension liability. It just gets the next year reallocated to all the other entities in the multi-employer cost sharing plan.
Is that disclosed that way in that report?
Can you say that again, please?
Is there a disclosure about this, what you just stated in the report?
Yeah, there's a number of different pages disclosing it. Yeah, there is.
It's like a third of the report.
Yeah, I had sent a question to Kelly earlier wondering what so it's deficit equity is 2.5 million. And it said most of that can be explained by net pension liability. So I wondered what the heck that was. So,
Yeah, and it was a new standard probably 6 years, 5-6 years ago.
all right.
Thank you for the accounting lesson for a lot of this. And I look forward to more. Last question is, we're supposed to consider this for approval tonight. Do we approve it with it as it sits, or is there a way to approve it with the modifications that have been referenced and will be sent over? Or do we need to meet again in a week or something to approve this?
I think that really is up to the board. Either way, I think that's up to the board.
Kelly, do you have an opinion? Thank you for joining, by the way. I didn't know you were going to be here tonight.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you can definitely approve with the caveat of those like before mentioned updates just happening to the report.
Okay, and if we choose to reconvene to approve it, when's our deadline? Can you remind me?
Well, you, the deadline really is end of December.
End of December? What about for
It's-
reporting purposes, Kelly?
Our bond covenants are, I think it's like November 20th.
Okay, so
Or-
we need to meet next week or the week after.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I think we can discuss that or amongst ourselves.
All right, any further questions for the auditor? All right. Thank you, Andy, for joining us tonight.
Thanks,
Thank
Andy.
Thank you, and sorry about those minor errors that will get corrected, and will you funnel those through Kelly, and Kelly will get them to us?
Yeah, that sounds good.
Okay.
I thought you
thank
put them in there to make sure we were reading it.
I appreciate, because that I appreciate the questions, and you're reading it, because they're not all of our clients would have noticed that, and not all presentations do we even get questions, so I appreciate it.
Good, thank you.
I
Thank
was gonna
you.
thank Kelly, but I didn't think she was leaving yet.
Oh, okay.
I thought she might stick around for the vote. But Andy, I know you have another meeting to run to, so thank you.
Thank you.
Right. I would entertain a motion regarding the audit.
I will make that motion to approve the fiscal year 22 final annual financial report and the letter. I'll look at the actual title of it. The final management communication with the caveat of the correction of the aforementioned errors and any that are found in the next day or two.
Second,
Okay, thank you, Director Dayton, for the second discussion.
Do we want to create a list now of things that we mentioned? And I have one more we can add to it, just so that's done. And then it sounded like, Richard, you might want to keep looking, or you might have them.
I would, I'll be honest, I would prefer to reread it all and have a look at all of the corrections and have everybody together, like everybody's together. I also don't know if I want to meet again in 2 weeks. But so I think best practice would be to wait and do it the correct way. But if we cannot find a time in the next 5 minutes for us all to get together again for a committee of the whole or something like that, I think we can approve it and make those corrections. So,
They're mostly editorial anyway, so.
yeah, so I'm okay either way. I voice my preference, but I'm okay.
Yeah, this is a difficult month for scheduling. I asked Yulia to help me find a new date to do committee of the whole because our originally scheduled date is election night and public schools cannot hold meetings on election nights. So finding an alternative was difficult. So I think I would like to approve it with the caveat that we have our edits.
Okay. Can we have our edits to Kelly by the Monday morning? So we can get the final version. By,
That sounds reasonable.
yeah, Monday afternoon or Tuesday afternoon or something. And then, so.
Out on Monday, just want to
you're
put that
out
out
on
there.
Monday?
I don't know if we want to send them out to Richard. That would probably be faster if you want it by Monday.
Yeah, well, if you're out, all our kids are home with us on Tuesday. Maybe we should say end of day Tuesday and we'll get them to Kelly Wednesday and we can go over it Wednesday, Kelly.
That sounds good.
Finance committee meeting on Tuesday.
There is no finance meeting this month. I noticed that when I was writing the reschedule email, so
Oh.
we'll talk about that later.
I have it down for the first.
I thought it
That's
was
not
on the
happening.
calendar.
It's not on the Google Calendar
Okay.
and I think we skipped November because we didn't want to skip December.
Oh, so we're not meeting on Tuesday?
We're not meeting on Tuesday no matter what. We might be meeting the Tuesday after, I'll let you know.
Okay.
That's election day. Can
What?
committees meet?
Oh, we can't do it.
No.
Yeah, we'll talk about it, Kelly.
No meetings.
My last question or thought on this is there a way to word this where it's not, like, we're approving it, but it's not approved until these are done? Does that make sense, or am I
Conditional
being too,
approval.
Conditional approval with changes.
what's that?
Conditional approval
Yeah, okay,
pending changes.
okay. Do I need to modify my motion?
No, I think you had that in there.
Okay, good.
All right. Any other thoughts? Discussion? All right, all those in favor of approving the audit as presented tonight with the additional audits that will be submitted by Monday. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. All right, we're running a bit behind schedule. We got 7:30. All right, so we'll do director's report 7:30 to 8:30. To give you the full hour. Okay, sound good?
Sounds good.
All right, Director Christensen.
Thanks. I'm going to make just a slight change in the order of things. There I have you'll see on the agenda, the last thing in the director's report is Power Up, a new diversity, belonging, equity, and inclusion group in middle school. And Dean St. Fennig is going to give just a brief presentation on that. And she is here, and Elizabeth, you should be able to share, or I guess Yulia is doing that.
Thanks, Yulia. Thank you, Dr. Christensen and school board, and thank you for letting me zoom in for this. I have family in from Portland today, and I had dinner at my house, so this is really nice. I'm just super excited to come and talk about this opportunity at the middle school. This is sort of the brainchild of several people. Deanna Erwin, our school social worker, and I really are working in tandem to proactively combat things at our schools such as bullying, rumor mills, just trying to build up skills so that we can tackle those sort of problems before they begin. And so the mental health team had been tootling around ideas about how to get some groups in front of kids, things that would maybe be groups to teach de-stressing skills, groups to teach organizational skills, anything that is just front loading kids with support and skills. And we have several organizations, like we had student council, we have a really strong GSA, and those are also activities that are building leadership skills. So what we decided to do was to join forces and to combine these Thursday skill groups with some Friday leadership groups, which is going to contain the Gender and Sexuality Alliance, the GSA, led by Dr. Katzmini and Natalie Kaplan. Adding a new leadership group, which is yet to be named because I want the students to name it. It's going to be basically a diversity leadership group, and Dr. Rowe has offered to staff that and take that on. This was a conversation that I had with Cheyenne Marcus one day. We were just kind of sitting around talking about TCGIS and how she feels at it. And we came up with the idea that TCGIS needed a diversity leadership group. My vision is that this student-led group will combine with the school board member group, the DBEI team, and be student voice that the DBEI team can use to form their plans, and that these two groups can hopefully work together. Frau Coffey is running some mental health advocates, so she's creating leadership in those kids to then go out and help others. And then the student council, which was formerly advised by Director Albers, and she's got a bigger role this year, so I'm going to be advising that in partnership with Dr. Christensen. You can see the Thursday skills groups are things like stress reduction, conquering challenges, planning organizational skills. We plan on having those groups rotate throughout the year. Those groups are every Thursday during advisory, so students are not missing academic time. They are missing what we call Lernzeit, like a grade check time, free reading time. They're not missing any important curriculum. And they are going to change out as we see student need change. And then the same thing with Friday. Those are also done during advisory. Friday is our community day. So the things that those students are missing are just kind of fun community builders. There's one thing that might not be on this slide. Yulia, is that the last slide?
Yeah, yes.
Okay. So Fridays are going to alternate for these leadership groups. And then there's the fifth Friday will be a middle school assembly, which will feature topics that, again, will be sort of based on student need. They could be fun, and maybe we would be able to bring a group in to, I can't think of an example right now, but also if we're seeing something like cyberbullying is coming up a lot, we would do skits with students to illustrate why cyberbullying is bad and things like that, and just be able to use that as an audience to deal with the problems that we're having at the middle school. I think that's it. Super excited.
That's great. Dean St. Finnick, thank you.
Any questions for Dean St. Finnick? Okay, thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for attending.
I think I have a question. I mean, maybe I missed it. So are these groups like are the same students always in the same group, or?
Did you hear that, Dean St. Finnick?
I did.
Oh, still there.
I'm still here.
Yeah.
So we have it on Thursdays so that the groups that on Thursday will not conflict with any of the groups on Friday, and the groups on Friday, the leadership teams are meeting on different Fridays so that I can be in GSA, student council, diversity leadership, and any of the Thursday de-stressing groups. I mean, I can do all of it kind of at the same time. We didn't want to limit anybody.
But the students could, so they could be in several groups. One student could be.
Yep, They could, we for sure have students that are on student council that are also in GSA. And we're gonna have kids in GSA that are also gonna do the de-stressing with Frau Coffee, things like that, yeah. Just some more opportunities.
One quick question too. You mentioned like the 5th Friday middle school assembly. Is that
Yeah.
all of the groups or is that all of middle school?
That's the entire middle school. Thanks for that clarification. We haven't decided if we're going to split it 5, 6, or 7, 8 yet. Sometimes those developmental lines are good to hold. We're also not entirely certain if all 4 grades will fit in the gym or not. I think we'll find out.
Have you connected with Director Aberhard, the chair of the Diversity and Belonging Committee? I know that one of their objectives is to create specifically with a staff working group to create a student survey. And I'm thinking that could be a good collaborative effort.
Well, I sat next to Director Aberhard when I asked who wanted to be the advisor for this team. And because of his specific connection, he knew that he couldn't do that. But I think we both had the idea and the vision at the same time that these 2 groups would work together. Dr. Hendricks has already created a student survey that really centers around belonging. And so I think we're planning on doing that. I'll definitely have Director Aberhard take a look at that, where it's not set to go out yet, but it has been started. We started with the bullying surveys this week or this month instead, because it is Bullying Prevention Month and we're hitting that really hard. And then we will lead into that, but thanks for that suggestion. And Director Aberhard, you can expect that coming your way.
Great, thank you.
I forgot to mention that it's called Power Up, and that great image of Super Mario with a mushroom, just getting stronger and getting bigger.
Love it. All right, thank you so much.
I'll share my screen here and try to move quickly through my slides on a few things so that we can get to Dean Noy's presentation, which is kind of the highlight. Oops, what happened here? Here we go. All right. So I'm going to start with key performance indicators with enrollment as usual. Our current enrollment, this is as of today. What you saw in the chart was, or what you saw in the board packet was from before break. But I got these new numbers this week. They're the same as last week, 614. Okay. Our financial key performance indicators, this is as of September 30th. Our days cash on hand is 58. We want to be at 60, so we're just below that. Our fund balance to annual expenditures is 28.4. And our debt service coverage ratio is currently 1.02. The next several slides are about the parent satisfaction survey and some highlights of admin responses to some of the things that came up. Several slides are going to talk about bullying. So you'll see some of the metrics at the bottom from the survey. Do you think bullying is a problem at our school? That's a simple yes or no question.
So that's a student survey, right? Because that's not the parent survey.
Oh, that's not the parent survey. So I didn't add these in.
Okay.
So I'm not sure who did. So they
Yeah,
might have been
might have
added.
been Dean Sunway.
Might have been Dean St. Finnig. So
Just a little background for those that weren't in attendance at last month's meeting. We did have a full presentation of the parent count or parent. So a representative from parent council came and presented the full results of the parent survey. So this is selecting the key takeaways and how admin is going to address them.
Mhm. So our deans keep a close eye on Swiss data. Those are the data that come from the behavior sheets that are turned in by teachers when something comes up, and they're able to track a number of things there, including gender, race, grade, time of day, place in the school that things come up so that we can note patterns that arise. And we note that the Swiss data that our deans track does not accord with the results from the parents' survey. In other words, it's considerably higher. Bullying is reported as considerably higher in the parents' survey. And there's probably a couple of reasons for this. The first one, and I didn't actually put it in here, is that there was no definition provided in the parents' survey for what bullying is. So it was left to parents to determine what bullying meant to them. So that's something maybe we can consider for next time, to provide a definition. It's possible that parents, so if your child is involved in a bullying incident, that has to be investigated and you would have been contacted. So some parents would know for sure that their child was the recipient of a bullying incident, but other parents might not have been contacted and might just have student report of something that's going on that they feel is bullying. So bullying may be, and there may be actual bullying that is happening that is also underreported. So those two things probably contribute to the difference.
Director Christensen, I
Yeah.
just wanted to comment that I was looking at some other charter school websites recently, and I just noticed Great River, our neighbor, has a anonymous bullying hotline that is on their website. So it's an anonymous number people can call to report bullying.
Interesting.
I just thought I would mention that because I thought it was interesting.
Mhm. The anonymous part is intriguing to me. It would make it difficult to
fix it.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Interesting. Some more about responses to bullying. We discovered that our bullying report form is a little bit buried on the school website, and so making that a little more prominent is probably a really good idea so that families can find it more easily. As Dean Sainfinnig already mentioned, October is Bullying Prevention Month. So a few things are going on throughout the school. There's advisory lessons happening in grades 5 through 8 in the middle school. In elementary school, throughout the year, there are anti-bullying and inclusion puppet performances and a second step bullying module. And as per board policy, we implement bullying prevention in the curriculum. So that is included in the 5th grade bridge and advisory. Social worker Irwin has provided some of the curriculum that's being used on impulse control, trying to get at the root of bullying. Student council and power up that Dean Sainfinnig just described is some student leadership that could lead to reduction in bullying. And the student survey on bullying, Dean Sainfinnig, did you say that already has gone out or will soon go out?
Oh, can you unmute?
You can.
Oh,
Yeah, you should be now. Try again.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so we did, teachers are instructed to do it this weekend, so the data is coming in. I don't have complete data. And 5th grade had some other things going on, so they have to do theirs. But I did start looking at the data, and that's where those other slides came from on the next, those other pictures came from on the next slide. Thought it was really interesting. This was about 70 to 75% of the kids in those classes reporting. And I thought this was just a really interesting, there's tons of stuff, and I'll maybe have to put some stuff together if the board is interested in some big takeaways. I could do that for the next meeting. This was just the first thing that seems to be 8th graders, maybe frontal lobes a little more formed, I'm not sure, but just a stark contrast.
so moving on to a couple other things that came up and stood out to us in the parent survey, and that was that 1/3 of respondents claimed not to understand the role of the elementary school and middle school deans, which is fascinating. What they do, and probably some of that is the title. The dean role is not completely unique to TCGIS, but the word principal would be more common, or something else. So one of the things that I plan to do is to have a room brief spotlight on the deans, who they are and what they do, and what their roles are. And I'm certainly open to other ideas. A fourth of respondents claimed not to feel well informed about classroom and school-wide expectations and how their child is doing in school. That was a single question, but I separated it out here because it struck us on the academic team that those are actually two quite different things. Classroom and school-wide expectations is different than how your child is doing in school. So one, you would find out in these places, for example, at curriculum night and conferences is where you would find out about expectations, as well as in the parent handbook, although I didn't put it in there. How your child is doing in school. Screener results and MCA results are sent out routinely. You can find more information about how your child is doing in the Infinite Campus parent portal. Sorry, the family handbook should have been about classroom and school-wide expectations. And then there are reminders about what's going on in school and how kids are doing in the news blot that goes out from middle school routinely. Did I miss anything there, Dean St. Finnig? Okay. So these are things that we do already. Figuring out how to highlight them is I guess what we need to focus on. Since that's a pretty significant number if a quarter of respondents feel like they don't know where to go to get that information.
Can I add something?
Yeah, of course.
Teachers also send out regular updates on what's going on in their classrooms, like Castle Cleveland.
Yeah, right. Yeah, thanks for that.
It's time to sign up for curriculum, or not curriculum.
Conferences, yeah.
I already did, so.
Snag your spot, right?
Got my spot.
I'm on here 10 minutes after giving email.
Okay.
And it was 2/3 gone already.
Yeah, it's popular.
Try to move quickly here to give Dean Noy her time. Parents expressed, so we don't have, I didn't put the numbers in here, but parents expressed less satisfaction with math, German, and SEL meeting their student needs. And some ways that we're addressing that are through always through differentiation in the classroom. We are working on strengthening math language in English from German. So in 4th grade, as they move into 5th grade, learning vocabulary in English about math, even though they're learning math in German, teaching them key terms in English so that when they get to math in 5th grade, that they have a foundation. There's a brand new program of student math tutors that Roxanne Cornell is doing, which has a lot of promise. And for SEL, we of course do SEL support through ADSIS and a variety of social emotional learning lessons in all the grades throughout the year.
Can you speak to the German portion?
Sorry, did I skip the German portion?
I don't see anything listed for German. Do you have I think you have a task force in place.
We have an immersion task force in place.
Do you have something that's focused on?
It's focused on a variety of things. What did we talk? I'm totally drawing a blank. What did we talk about last time, Kevin? Getting German, focusing on German in the hallways, signage throughout the schools, focusing on DAF, strengthening that. Dean St. Finnig, anything come to mind for you?
One thing the immersion task force talked about was that with the absence of Beate Simon, we lost some of our explicitly immersion-based professional development. Something that Yasmin Rosvig picked up last year and kind of ran with, and now we lost her too. So we have a gap to fill there. I know that Director Eberhard will be filling that gap, and we're going to take turns on that and talk about things like checking for understanding and just all filling in with our expertise, because some of our teachers are coming and remember, Dr. Christensen, we've heard we don't fully understand what immersion is, right? If our teachers are coming with language and they aren't expressly instructed in immersion language. So just building on what an immersion model looks like as far as best practice.
Yeah.
Is one of the tasks of that task force.
And that might seem really fundamental, and it is. Our teachers from Germany, I actually had a German teacher say to me that before she came to TCGIS, she'd never heard the term immersion and didn't know what it meant. And it means something different at every immersion school, depending on the percentage of classes you're teaching in German. And so just constantly reviewing, what does immersion mean at TCGIS? What does it mean in different grades? And how can we support our teachers in teaching German to non-native speakers who are immersed, not as they would be, for example, as if they were new to Germany and learning German, where they would leave the classroom and continue to hear and speak German, but they're immersed for 6 hours a day, 10 months out of the year. It's a unique model, and our teachers have therefore unique professional development needs. And so just working on strengthening our teachers' confidence in what immersion means here. And then finally, there was some comments on asking about more opportunity to challenge advanced students. Differentiation is, of course, one area where that is always addressed in every classroom, in every lesson. Co-teaching, which is where we have SPED teachers and general ed teachers teaching together, is another thing that's happening this year that can help address this. Push in versus pull out tier 2 support is happening this year. Math team is happening, and they're getting ready actually to go to a competition. And the student math tutors that I mentioned earlier is another way to allow students who are confident to support other students and to therefore strengthen their own skills by supporting other students.
Can I add something again?
Yeah.
I would also add the school newspaper team to this, challenging advanced students.
Yeah.
I mean, because we're writing articles in German.
Yeah.
And students run with their own topics. They choose their own topics. They follow their own projects.
Fantastic.
Is that an elective course?
Yes.
Mhm.
I see you have student math tutors. What about student German tutors for younger kids?
We don't have that yet. It's a great thought. Mhm. This is a brand new initiative by a single teacher. It's a great thought. Mhm. Yeah.
You just being not in education, can you just talk a little bit more about co-teaching and push in versus pull out and tier two support, just in terms of?
Yeah. Elizabeth, are you comfortable talking about co-teaching? I can talk about push in versus to pull out. Pull out literally as we pull students out of class.
To do like extra activities, like
services.
I think
I'm just looking at for challenging advanced students.
Yeah, I was thinking that too. I think co-teaching is seen as an accommodation and as a support for our tier 3 students or as teachers or students receiving special services. But what co-teaching does is it frees up then the tier 1 classroom teacher to take maybe the upper 10% and do things. We have some classrooms where there are 4 adults in a room at a time. We have an intern, we have a co-teaching SPED teacher, we have the general ed teacher, maybe an EA, or in some instances, we've got like a student teacher. So they're able to level students. We have some English classes that are doing this right now. And then anytime you split the kids into smaller groups, you have the ability to dive deeper, to redo basics, whatever the group needs. And so the ability then, it's the same with the tier 2 support. That's another instance where we will potentially have 4 teachers in a classroom at a time. You just have smaller groups of student teacher ratio, and you can just hit needs better. If that makes sense.
Does that help?
Yeah.
Okay, and finally, some school highlights coming up. Halloween parade on Monday, October 31st. That's at 2:30. If you want to come watch some cuteness, you can come to the school playground and the kids will walk around the neighborhood and then go back to their classrooms before being released to parents. Our annual Martin's Tag celebration is on Thursday, November 10th. Conferences are the 21st and 22nd of November. That's Thanksgiving week. There's no school on either of those days. History Day just started up on Monday of this week. The topic this year is Frontiers, and our students have the opportunity to participate in that and compete at the national and state level, potentially, depending on how they do. They can do movies, websites, reports, a variety of different things. So it's not something that a school is required to participate in, but we're really delighted that our students do. And we actually have had a student go on from this level. And then middle school power up, and Dean St. Fennick has already talked about that. And then I'll mention one other thing that I failed to put on here, and that is that we have a cooperative event with the University of St. Thomas coming up. It's been in the one brief, coming up on the 16th of November. That's a Wednesday. There is a exhibit on the earliest researchers on the Holocaust, and that will be at St. Thomas. And the opening event of that exhibit is a screening of the film Hannah Arendt, about the famous philosopher who attended the Eichmann trial and coined the phrase "the banality of evil." I'll be introducing that film. So it is a combination of TCGIS and University of St. Thomas collaborative endeavor. You're all invited to attend. It is not a child-friendly film. There's nothing graphic in the film, but it's just pretty heady. So I would say potentially an 8th grader who's had some background in the Holocaust might make sense of it, but it's really an adult event. And with that, I turn it over to Dean Noy for a talk about our academic key performance indicators from the past year.
Just gonna move on over here. I'm not.
Oh, Dean Noy
talking.
and Dean White. I will unshare.
Yeah, perfect.
Dean Noy, we have 30 minutes. Do you think that's enough, or do we need to extend the time slot?
That's a good question. I think it'll be a little tight, but we can see.
Okay.
We've got to go.
They've timed their presentation, and it's enough time
Got
for
my
the presentation.
timer over here if you want to go out.
It's enough time for the
Okay, good.
presentation, but it'll depend on the question.
Like a visual timer.
Yep.
Well, I'll just jump in then, because time work. It's no longer September 29th. Hello, everybody. So I'm just gonna go ahead and get started. We're gonna be looking at our DSD-1 results and our MCA results tonight. For those who don't know, the DSD-1 is the exam that is the first step towards demonstrating a language proficiency that would enable students to study at a German university. The goal for students taking the exam is to demonstrate a B1 level of proficiency using the Common European Framework. So the areas tested are reading, speaking, listening, and writing. Go ahead, yeah. So here you can see the DSD-1 results of the 8th graders who participated, and you can look at that over time. So in the class of 2022, 53 students participated. Or there were 53 students in that class, 49 of them participated in the DSD-1. There's about 67% passing. So in any given year, a varying number of students take it, not necessarily everybody.
It's worth noting that to pass, you have to pass all 4 sections. So we have students who still did really well, but didn't pass all 4 sections.
Yeah, they maybe missed it in one section and then therefore didn't, pass overall. So And just for some context about why some students don't take it, some students maybe joined the school late. I mean, there's really actually a number of reasons why not everybody would take the DSD Eins, but just wanted to be transparent about that. If you go to the next slide, you can see the percentage of students passing each modality. So you'll notice speaking was 67%. So we did have several students who, you know, the case was that they maybe didn't pass speaking, but they spoke the other areas, for example. Go ahead. I just wanted to show you over time in each modality the percentage points that have been achieved by each cohort. It's worth noting that the thresholds for reading and listening vary depending on the difficulty of the tests or of the text that they're working with. So that can change. And yeah.
Is the first year that the DSD was done, was that in 2013?
The first year that we have data, I don't have that. I'd have to look that up.
I'm just
I have it
thinking
in
that
the
was
annual assessment results.
Yeah.
I just don't have that in my head.
2013 was the
Haven't had
first,
it in my head.
was the
2013
first
is the
graduating
year we
class.
started taking DSD.
Sounds about right. It definitely already happened before I came here.
Yeah.
It was in 2018, so.
Okay. So we can move on to MCAs. MCAs are annual assessment measuring progress to Minnesota state standards. And we're required to do this through every Student Succeeds Act and Minnesota statute. 3rd through 8th grade takes reading, 3rd through 8th grade take math, and science is taken in 5th and 8th grade. So those are the relevant MCAs for our school. It's worth making sure that everybody understands that Minnesota state standards are different compared to Common Core standards. Every state has their own set of standards. Standards describe what students should be able to know and to do in each grade. And Minnesota has not adopted Common Core state standards. And part of why this is worth mentioning is that different assessments that we do, for example, screeners, are based on Common Core standards and not on Minnesota state standards. So we sometimes when we're, depending on which test we use, we might see different results in our students because they're based on different standards. The MDE offers us guidance about how to use test results. So we want to look at overall proficiency for a grade, school, or district. We want to compare results across student groups. We want to look at changes in achievement over time. And we want to use as one of multiple data points for school and district decision making. So it's kind of strange in a data presentation that's only about DSD and NCA to mention that that it's important to look at multiple data points. But I just wanted to mention that. So we want to be able to identify strengths or gaps in our curricula in scope and sequence. We want to identify professional development needs for continuous improvement and school-wide trends and equitable opportunities to learn across grades, buildings, and student groups. So our participation went up post-pandemic. That's a good sign. We have more data to work with. It's slightly more participation for reading than for math. You can go ahead, yeah. Here you can see the trends of our science MCA results over time. That light blue is TCGIS, and that dark blue on the bottom is the state. The key always shows like a light green TCGIS. It's just because as a charter school, we're our own district. So if we were looking at data from a school in St. Paul, that green line would be St. Paul Public School District. And that teal one would be the specific school. So just so there's no confusion, we're looking at the teal line for Twin Cities, German Immersion School. We have had a decline in our science scores. We're still outperforming the state. the state, but there's been a decline. And here you can see the breakdown exceeds, meets, partially meets. Does not meet. There's no data available for 2020 because they didn't take, the MCs in 2020. And their reading results, TCGIS and statewide. We kind of mirror the state a little bit in our trending, but the trend's slightly downward. And then slide 13 shows the breakdown for reading MCAs. And we can go ahead to math. So math is where we're seeing a pretty steep decline. We saw our scores drop, particularly over the pandemic, and remain low. We're going to talk more about this later on in the presentation. And if you go to the next slide, you can see the breakdown. All right, slide 16. It's a little hard to see on the screen up there, but you can track cohort performance by following the colors.
Screen.
What's that?
Can you do full screen?
And if you
Julia, with
just
that?
look across.
Full screen.
Full screen and get rid of the pictures or like the videos of people.
Yeah, so if you look straight across, you'll be able to see how third graders have performed over every year. And if you follow the colors, you'll follow like class of 22 throughout the years, for example. In the far right column, you can see the difference by cohort performance. So how did specifically the class of 2027 do this year compared to last year? And then in the column second to the left, you're just looking across at the grade level itself. I'll give you a minute to look at it, and then we're going to kind of focus in on certain spots here.
Esther.
Yeah.
Those two difference columns, that's just between 21 and 22.
Correct. Just looking 21 and 22.
So, what are the cohorts again? I'm sorry.
Sorry,
What are the cohorts?
the cohorts are the grade level. So like class of 2022, class of 2023, and kind of working backwards from the bottom.
And then what are the percentages?
The percentages in the columns under the years are the percent students that have scored proficient. And then in the last two columns, it is the difference. So the difference in percent achieving proficiency. So I think we can take an example on the next slide. So the class of 2024. You can see that their math, 46% of those students scored proficient in math, which actually is for that cohort a lot of growth. It's 23% growth because they scored 23% proficient in 2021. So that seems like a class that struggled in the pandemic and made a lot of gains this past year. And the class of 22 went from 34% of proficient in math in 2021 to 44% proficient. So while we might look at 44 objectively and say that's pretty low, that actually represents a 10% gain for this cohort coming out of the pandemic.
That's great to see.
So some things that we did to achieve that growth, we had piloted a new curriculum in 5-6, and we conducted a curriculum review that we are implementing right now in 7th and 8th. And we experimented with various, we talked in the previous presentation a little bit about tier 2 supports that are also in a push-in model. We found some success. We piloted that actually last year. And so we're taking that, seeing what we're able to do and continuing that so we can, I mean, obviously with the objective of stimulating more growth in our students. Okay, the next slide. You'll see a sharp decline in 8th grade science performance. That class had 3 different teachers throughout the year. And on top of a COVID situation, the inconsistency seemed to be a challenge for those students. Yeah, I mean, that's where we're at there. We have our work to do. We'll move on to the next slide. And here we're looking at our 3rd grade math scores of 36% proficient and 30 in 4th grade in class of 2025 and class of 2026. So we're going to be talking a little bit more about this now. Next. So in seeing this data, particularly with some of the declining scores, I looked at our historical performance and whether between 21 and 22, how many students improved by at least 1 grading category. So the grading categories on MCAs are does not meet, partially meets, and exceeds. So I was trying to pinpoint, well, how much, how many students are, where are we at and how much growth are we really seeing? What was noticeable was that we didn't have enough data to compare for a lot of these students, especially the younger ones. It could mean a lot of things. It could mean, the biggest takeaway is a fluctuation in student population. And we did have during the class of 21, if you can kind of recall that participation chart, we did have lower participation. So we had a lot of 4th graders who were taking MCAs for the first time. That could be an impacting factor. If you take this, if you go to the next slide, I kind of looked to try to compare what that growth looked like in improving categories over in different years, other years to compare it with. And just the biggest thing that you see is not enough data to compare 21, 22, as well as we would be able to compare, for example, 2018 to 2019, 2017 to 2018. So it's not really surprising that we have less data to work with, but it just kind of leads to not being super surprising that our data didn't pan out the way that we would have expected, because what we had, the data that we had was incomplete, right, from 2021. So we're seeing what we can learn from it. And if you go to the next slide, in the conversation about talking with different measures and different standards, you can see that actually for our 3rd graders, the 3rd graders are the results on the left. They perform better in their spring A math than they had since 2018. So their math scores and the A math compared to Common Core standards actually have gotten better over time. In 4th grade, it wasn't, we didn't see that they were the best overall, but they also, they weren't tanking in a way that we would have expected to see if our MCA results are turning out in that way. So this is just all part of collecting the data to try to understand, what the problem is and what we need to do, right? So by this other measure, our indicators were such that our math MCA results should be just fine, right? There are some differences between the MCAs and the A math. A math again, based on Common Core standards, MCAs based on Minnesota standards. A math is taken 3 times a school year. MCAs are taken once each school year. They're designed for different functions. A math is designed for universal screening to see which students might need extra support. MCAs are designed for accountability. Another key difference is A math takes about 20 to 30 minutes to administer, and MCAs take about an hour and a half. Usually it's 2 days, 45 minutes each. So it's just, yeah, just some other variables that can help us understand, you know, some potential things that could be happening with our math situation. I guess I should add that Fastbridge claims that AMAP predicts MCA performance with an 80% accuracy. So I have my doubts, but it's worth noting that they do claim that. So our next slide. So when we have this data, the screening that we do 3 times a year, we use this to make decisions about who needs extra support. We base that on AMAP, math MCAs, and teacher collected data and observations about which students seem to need a little bit more. And then we have a math focused 3rd, 4th grade PLC. And part of what they will do is, or what they've already started doing, is reviewing benchmark MCA data. So they'll look at a report. I took a screenshot of some of it just that you can see what that looks like. It breaks it down by standard strand. So on the right, there's a spot that says strand results. And you can see number and operation, algebra, geometry and measurement, data analysis. So part of what they do is they break down, okay, where were our students particularly strong? Where were they particularly weak? So that they can adjust their instruction to bring them, implement best practices to have better student outcomes. Okay, now I pass it over to people.
All right. So in looking at these pieces of data and different things that we're looking at as to why is this happening? And we discovered a few things. Teachers presented some of this, and obviously one of the big problems is that kids in elementary, K through 4, are learning and doing everything in math in German. However, their assessments are all in English. And so we run into a problem where there's a language issue. So the fraction model on the right is one of the questions. If you don't know what the word equivalent fraction means in English, even if you understand it in German, they're likely going to get that problem wrong. Also, the symbols, if you look down below, the Punkt, the dot, and the comma are reversed in German to or European to American money. So one error in that could lead to some huge wrong answers for students often. Division also. On the left is the German way to write the symbolic division problem, and on the right side is what we do in the US typically. And on the right is what the kids see on the MCA tests. So there's a challenge right there that the kids have to keep these 2 different things separated as they are doing their assessments. If we go to the next one. So there are some layered supports that we are putting in place.
One back.
One back. There we go. One of the things in middle school is that there's team teaching of math, as was brought up before, in 5th grade. Last year's 4th grade cohort that struggled a bit with math showed up in their scores. They are doing or having the results of that team teaching, supporting them. In 3rd and 4th grade, we implemented last spring, said, yep, let's do looping for 3rd and 4th grade, which had overwhelming support from the teachers. They all wanted to do it. And so that will provide consistency for our students. Part of what we did also last year is take a look at our math materials, and we chose a new math series called Minimax from Germany. Minimax, I'll show you on the coming, but it was actually award-winning in Germany. And I don't think we knew that at the moment, that we were like, we really like this. The next thing that we're doing is explicit teaching of vocabulary and symbols. So the thing that we just looked at, we've had some of that, but it's not been as consistent as we realize that we probably need for 3rd and 4th grade. And then computational practice packets in English. So we piloted this last year in a couple classrooms. One of our ADSES teachers took a look at scores and really dug into things and noticed that computation was one of those things that kids seem to struggle with the most. And it was something that where language wasn't quite as much of an issue. So they were able to work through those. We're looking at implementing those across all of 3rd and 4th grade this year. So the next slide. So as I mentioned, we had a curriculum review last year. We had one teacher representative from grades 1, 2, 3, and 4 work with Yasmin Roth-Josvig as our curriculum coordinator, and she led this process. One of the things that, of course, became obvious is that the German math curricula are based on German standards, and we have our kids measured by the Minnesota standards, and those don't always match up. One thing that we recognize is that things like fractions are introduced at different grade levels. And so fractions need to be created, practiced, taught by the teachers themselves, because it doesn't exist in the German language here anywhere. So, and it's not in the German 4th grade books because they don't teach that typically until 5th grade. So these are the problems that we're running into, and teachers have stepped up and said, okay, yep, this is the curriculum holes that we have. And here's how we're going to support that. Here's how we're going to make sure that our kids get what they need for instruction. And then the final slide here, the CLET Minimax curriculum. So School Book of the Year Award for 2020. The online resources and differentiation tools, teaching tools are just amazing. It's very visual, and it was designed for students who are learning German as a foreign language in Germany. But it fits pretty well with our students also. It's well structured. And one of the things that wasn't on here was that just visually, it was a lot less busy than some of the other math books that were out there. It was easy for kids to take a look at. They knew what they needed to do. Teachers really liked what it looked like. There were multicultural components that were part of our curriculum decision-making. So we're very happy, very pleased with what we've seen thus far. So that is it for the presentation.
Great, thank you. Okay, so we have 4 minutes for questions, unless the board would like to extend the time for discussion by 10 minutes. So moved. All right, so without objection, we'll extend the time for 10 minutes. All right, questions?
Yeah. the issue in math with like the symbols, so I mean, this is from an issue from the beginning of the school, that's not a new issue. So that doesn't explain any MCA differences. I mean, why MCAs were better in the past than.
We believe that some of that is instruction that fell through during the pandemic. The kids were learning online, they may have been sick, teachers may have been sick. The instruction was not as through, from one day to the next as it had been in the past.
Haven't there been, like, could that have fallen through at some point prior to the pandemic? Because didn't we have some math issues, 3, 4, 5 years ago as well? So is there, yeah, so could that have been taken into account more a decade ago than it is now, or was even 4 years ago, and it's not just the pandemic?
I probably 10 years ago, that was before my time, but I know that 3rd and 4th grade teachers have needed to supplement every year since what I can remember. So they've had to create supplemental packets for kids for learning. And that's been a chronic issue.
And the money one again, I understand the other ones. I didn't understand the reasoning for the euro sign and the dollar sign causing a problem.
No, it's the comma and the
Oh, it was the comma. Okay,
period.
They are reversed.
yeah, got it.
Thank you so much for this very informative presentation. Wondering if you can talk about the work that you've done to support the teachers. I noticed here with the professional learning community that it looks like it's a development opportunity for the teachers to grow some of their capacities and respond to some of the data. Can you talk about like faculty development opportunities that are helping teachers to grapple with basically the fallout of the pandemic, right? From 2020, really doing a number on student progress. So kind of opportunities have you all designed for teachers to build their capacities to respond to that dip that is a trend just for a school that looks like it's stable, right? So nation.
Yeah. We're at the point now where we just are getting our assessment, our first screener results. And so that is going to help direct what we do next. Where did things fall apart and what grade levels did they fall apart? So I think that will give us a lot of information and data as to what those next steps should be for professional development and support. Anything else to add to that?
I'm just within the PLC groups, we have different cohorts of PLCs working on different things. We have a science of reading letters. We have two PLCs that are they're doing some literacy work, and we have 3rd and 4th grade doing this math work, and part of it is giving them time to connect with other colleagues and together working through some of the challenges of people. So part of it is time.
And the ability to dig into this data and determine what their best next moves are.
I have just one other follow-up question, but it's more related to the German language proficiency tests. I was wondering about the ways that people are responding to speaking being the lowest of the 4 competencies. So listening was almost 100%, which is terrific. But what about like speaking? Have you all discussed ways to strengthen that?
I mean, that's a good question. I could answer myself, but I also have Kevin here, who is sort of the expert on this and about speaking.
I can just say that it's also worth noting that during the pandemic, there were simply fewer opportunities for speaking. When they were online, a number of our kids were online, so that certainly must have contributed to it. But in terms of explicit improved opportunities for speaking, I don't know if there's anything in particular, except that we're just back in person. Any thoughts on that, Kevin?
Yeah, I mean, I agree that there were a lot less opportunities during the pandemic over distance learning to for students to speak. Some were also not really able to speak over Zoom because of this very interesting circumstance. But this has also, in my opinion, created I don't know if attitude is the right word, but a mindset that speaking German is not really the norm so much anymore, like it used to be before, because of this. That is something that we're dealing with that is really difficult to tackle.
I was just gonna ask, some of the other immersion schools in town seem to be more rigorous in terms of homework and expectations outside of school. And I'm wondering if there's been any conversation. I'm not a huge advocate for extra homework, but given kind of the lag that our kids have experienced, especially because of the pandemic, I'm wondering if that's been something that's been discussed, meaningful things to do at home to reinforce what's happening in the classroom. Because I know I can only speak from my own experience, but there's not a lot of homework that comes to our house to kind of reinforce what's learned during the day.
Mhm. Part of that is by design, that we have students who are learning German in class, and the teacher is providing that instruction, is helping guide them with the written piece of it. And then if we were to send that home, I think 80% of our families might say, I don't know what to do with this. I can't help. And that's some of what we've gotten back is, I don't know how to help my child. I kind of understand this, but I'm not quite sure because I can't read the language. And so that's been part of it. I don't know if you have anything else to add to that, or Director Abrahart.
What I like to add is that this seems like a really good solution to get more homework and have them work more. I think in reality, our students, when you interact with them on a daily basis, they're really busy outside of school. I don't think homework really fits into the busy schedules that students have. They have sports, they have music, they have a lot of stuff going on. When you talk with them about homework, a lot of them very honestly tell you that there is just no time left. And I honestly, I understand that.
See declining grades and mental health suffering if homework is too far implemented. Of course, there are times when extra practice is necessary, of course, but I think what Kevin's saying is absolutely true. They're just as busy as they always have been, if not more.
Well, if I understand Director, like she said, there's hardly any homework coming to your house.
I can only speak from my personal.
No, I know, but is it right not to give any homework and just say like, well, the families don't understand? Or should I go give some homework in order to understand where the weaknesses are, where the problems lie? You know what I mean? So the excuse that the family can't help is not an excuse not to give any homework. Mm-hmm. If you give homework and you find out there's some problems, then outside of the family, then it's easier to find out.
Possibly. I think homework, I'm speaking from elementary level, which is going to look different from middle school also. And so I know that parents have come to teachers and said, I would like more for my student. Can you help me? Can you direct me? How can I help my child more so at home? And teachers are able to give that support to that parent who's asking for it.
I think it could also be one way to possibly help parents to address the parent survey issue, feel more in tune with what's happening. I know our first grade teachers sent home the workbooks over fall break so we could see what they were doing, which was really helpful because especially a first grader doesn't really give you an accurate report back on their day-to-day work. But it is helpful. Or if you sent a math worksheet home to Dr. Kuzinga's point, that you can kind of see where your child might be struggling and then be able to better connect with the teacher or whatnot outside. I am not a proponent of huge amounts of homework by any means, but just kind of something to reinforce or for parents to also have a better sense of where their student might be struggling in the classroom.
There was a German enrichment resources page that was created during the pandemic that still exists.
Which is great, but when the teacher assigns it, it has
It's
a lot more
different,
weight
yeah.
than when mom tells you, why don't you go check that?
Yeah, got it.
Can I answer to that?
Mhm.
With, I understand that you might see it that way, that you would like to have more of that. I also have talked to a lot of parents who are not able to be as involved in homework as much. And I think it would do the service overall for the families who are not able to provide that support. If we kind of make that the goal. Does that make any sense? That's fine.
Let's hear what Dean Noy has to say.
I was just gonna say that the efficacy of homework and, I mean, it really would depend on what the practice specifically is, whether it would result in an impactful difference academically. And so I guess I would be cautious to assume, I mean, extra practice can be helpful if it's the right kind of practice, it's the right level for that student, et cetera, et cetera. But it can actually also be harmful if you have a student who's struggling so much, they get this homework and now they're fighting with their parents and struggling over that too. It can actually be really detrimental as well. So I would just be cautious about what it can do for some kids. It might work. That's a good fit.
Dean Senfenig, we'll let you chime in.
Can
Yeah.
you hear me now? I froze for a second.
We can hear you now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can you hear me now?
Kind of.
You're chopping up a bit.
Oh. She's back.
She's on mute.
Maybe we'll come back to you. We'll let your internet stabilize, hopefully.
I think now she's muted.
Yeah, she is.
Is she unmuted?
Oh.
Can she do it herself?
No,
So I,
That was a big. I'm not sure if you can hear me.
Yeah, we can.
Oh. I was gonna say a lot of what Esther said. I just want to remind everybody that this conversation started with low speaking scores. Shoot.
We can hear
That's
you.
okay. I don't want to hold the meeting up. I'm just gonna say that homework wouldn't necessarily help.
Yeah.
Speaking scores is what all I really wanted to say. I'm good.
We got it.
That's fine.
Thanks.
I just want to, I don't know if I have an opinion on homework or no, homework and, or if my opinion really matter anyways, but I think it's interesting that we, in the same conversation, are saying that we need to change up our math structure to add English because the students are getting confused on their MCA scores, yet we're not sending homework home because we don't expect the parents to understand the German, and how there's not a idea of a solution there. Just the thought.
I'd like to just add as well that I think the impact of 2020, to your point earlier, Dean White, it's going to take more time to see how these things unfold. You know, just as was mentioned earlier with speaking, just being on Zoom, right? We are seeing an impact in terms of what the norm, the perceived norm is, the consequence. So I would just ask for us to continue to keep an eye on that, to try to assess, or at least capture data on how some of these trends that emerge as a consequence of 2020, if it is to sort of keep an eye on how they're, on what their fallout is, specifically with an eye on. Because I do think, just as mentioned with like speaking and how Zoom just completely rearranged what maybe what the students sort of expect speaking to look like or space to look like. Our students are still trying to figure that out, it seems to me. And I would imagine the teachers are still struggling with what to do with the consequences of 2020. And on one hand, I understand the conversation on homework. On the other hand, I also acknowledge that it is an equity issue. Absolutely is an equity issue in terms of, you know, parents, some parents may be having more time than others for a variety of possible reasons. There's no magic bullet, is my point, to tackling the after effects of 2020. So getting more data and following that data is what I'm asking.
Yeah.
I mean, Dr. Eberhardt made the point that we don't really know how much of this is the effect of pandemic, or the effect you mentioned was that basically there is people distancing themselves from, you know, or there's a trend of things of less speaking German in general, right? So we don't really know. We always say this is the pandemic, but we don't really know if it's really this pandemic. You know, it certainly has an effect, but there could be other effects too. I don't know.
Dr. Chaser.
Is there guidance that the state of Minnesota has given, or any other body, for how to address the fallout of 2020? So for example, you know, right now, teachers and the school might just be thinking of creative ways on how to address this, but there may be a process or procedures that may be effective for addressing this, that either the state or maybe federal government has worked out. So at TCGIS, is there someone, or is there a way to look at the presence of guidance out there for how to do this for teachers?
I mean, I think if you're talking about like looking at academic, where are our kids and where are they going? There's not a specific, the guidance from the state has been that there isn't a specific guidance from the state. I can tell you that in my work with ADSIS in Tier 2, that other schools are experiencing similar things. And we all know that when students are you know, part of our big struggle last year was having our students be ready to be students and be in the classroom and function and be able to be have their needs met enough to be receptive to learning. We're still facing that, and that's one of the other supports for our teachers is we did hire an additional behavior interventionist to help with the load of the behaviors that we were seeing in order to you know, make sure our students were ready for to learn. We did have funding that was available for helping our students, but there wasn't a specific do this in order to achieve this from the state. That didn't exist.
There were some implied guidelines, right? If the money can go for intervention, then the implication there is that intervention will help, right?
So with higher ed, I'm also seeing incoming students who, because they spent part of junior and really a lot of senior year on Zoom, they're struggling with that transition.
Yeah.
Coming into college level. And a lot of those soft skills that are so important about knowing how to be a student that enable you to learn. In this particular kind of study, that transition is very difficult. And I do think that Zoom has rearranged ways in which we think about learning spaces and expectations, including parent expectations around learning spaces. So I have no doubt that that has also affected every single level of education. And I really, you know, urge support for the teachers to
Mhm.
have the resources you all need to be able to tackle those real matters and for data that can help us to know how to provide that advocacy and support for teachers who are moving mountains, truly moving mountains. Thank you all so much.
Mhm. Well said. Could you speak to how our teachers are doing with, are the children ready to learn? Or how are we doing?
We're settling in a lot better now than we were a month ago.
Yeah.
We have, of course, our systems for supporting student behavior in the classrooms, and the first few weeks of school is always very busy. I think you're probably better equipped to speak to that.
We have a system in which the teachers can call down to the office and say, I need support. We have our behavior support folks on a schedule. The deans are on there as well. And when a teacher calls, somebody can respond immediately. That means that at this point in time, they don't have the groups that they usually work with. They don't have all of that, but we are very responsive these first 8 weeks or so of school by design. And so we're recording those when we respond to things, and there's quite a bit. Not necessarily, who knows why, but it's helping kids get transitioned back into being a student again, what it means to work cooperatively with other students, and what it means. I think part of it is, oh gosh, yeah, this is a 5-day week. I need to make it all the way through the end of the week. And that's building that in the kids is also starting to show. So they have more tolerance for 5-day weeks now, which is great.
Yeah, I can add from my experience, if you want to compare last fall to this fall, it's a different world. Like last fall, I sometimes ask myself if students still know what school even is. Like there were some behaviors and some patterns where I had never seen before. And that is just has trended to like into a normal direction again, where you were able to create opportunities to learn again. Whereas last fall, we were kind of surviving the days more or less.
Yeah.
And this year, we're getting back to like a normal school environment where students actually like come to school and know what school is and are happy to be in school and want to learn again.
All right, well, we went over our extra time. So I think we'll wrap up the discussion. And thank you both so much for coming in. It's really great. So we will go on recess until 9 o'clock. 8 minutes. We ready? I'm calling this meeting back to order. It is 9:04. So our board committee reports to go through. We will start with finance and facilities. Does anyone have any questions on the finance and facilities report? Oh, our finance guy is not here. The treasurer is not here. Okay, we go skip that.
That's Meister.
Governance, Director Albers,
All right, let's do it.
skip to you.
There are two policies up for consideration, that are, both 402, which is the disability non-discrimination policy. It's noted that it is under the 400 block, which is employment, of the policies. So this is not concerning students. And there were no change. Well, there was one cross off, because it is not a cross reference truly to the student disability non-discrimination policy. However, the general statement throughout the policy, nothing was changed. So we're looking to approve that one, as well as 509.2, formerly known as 509.1, which is the non-resident enrollment, which is a part of our corrections from MDE. So before we discuss further on that one, if you have it up and open, you'll notice it's very colorful. I would make a motion to approve policy 402 and 509.2, formerly known as 509.1. Count how many times I say
Thank
that.
you for the motion, Director Albers. Is there a second? Thank you, Director Dayton. Discussion on the policies.
So I mentioned 402 a little early that there's no changes to that one. However, non-resident enrollment, much of that has been changed due to things that MDE made notes on, as well as things that we did not feel were necessary to include in the policy. The first sentence stays as is. Twin Cities German Immersion School will consider admissions of students who are not residents of Minnesota under the following circumstances. However, numbers 1, 3, 4, and 6, 8, and 9 will be removed. Leaving currently 2, 7, the new 8 and the new 9, which were slightly updated. And those numbers will then transfer to 1 through 4. Much of this was either not necessary to include in the policy. So this is surrounding if we were to ever have students that lived in Hudson, Wisconsin, specifically, is mostly what we've talked about. They would be subject to paying tuition. So what do we charge for that tuition? What do we require for them to apply, etc.? So questions on that? I know it's a lot to read and look at.
Well, hopefully people read it ahead of time. So questions for Director Albers? All right, if there's no further discussion, then I'll ask for approval to approve policy 402 and policy 509.2 with the edits as shown in the board packet. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Thank you for all your work, Director Albers.
Thank you. Only one more in the 509 series left.
All right. Excellent. Director Hyde, we skipped over your finance and facilities report. Do you want to give any highlights or just take questions?
I know I didn't add this in the consent agenda, but I do need to add an action item. But before that, between the last finance meeting and committee of the whole, a lot of the questions that had come up in the finance meeting have been answered. So I wanted to give just a quick update on some of those items. A majority of the stuff is about the audit. We all know how that is now. PPP forgiveness application, we still haven't heard on it, but it was officially submitted. And we're still waiting to hear back, but I have no idea when. And there's one other. There's two questions on the report that were answered. If anybody wants to ask me about them later, we can, but action item, we need to. So I'll make a motion to consider I'll make a motion to approve the fiscal year 22 transfer of $7,822.66 from the general fund to the food service fund.
Thank you for the second.
Quick to the job.
Okay, so the motion on the table is to consider approving school year 22 transfer of $7,822.66 from the general fund to the food service fund.
The reasons for that are we cannot show a negative balance in the food service fund, so we have to do this. The auditors like to see meeting minutes reflecting the board voting on this.
Got it. Thanks for clarifying. Discussion on that motion?
And is this was reflected in the final audit and was mentioned in the presentation? Okay.
All right, hearing no discussion. All those in favor of approving this transfer, say aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Thank you. Anything else from finance? You good? Okay. All right, fundraising committee, Director Wright.
Yeah, we met in October. Currently, our focus is on Give to the Max Day in the Fall giving campaign. We'll be looking to raise about $6,000 through those efforts. In October, right around fall break, we sent a letter with the PTO inviting families to be involved by sharing their time, talent, or resources this year. So hopefully that will kind of lay some of the groundwork for our upcoming fall campaign. We've also reached out to a number of alumni families to ask them to help put together a matching gift that could be used to motivate first-time donors to TCGIS to help new families or families that maybe have not participated in the past feel motivated to do so. First-time donors last year helped us raise about $22,000. So that is not insignificant. We're also looking at some ways to encourage our top donors to renew their gifts and to let them know how much their giving means. We're also in the process of reviewing our milestones as well as the fundraising policy for the school. Those are kind of big takeaways.
Wow, that's great. It's a lot of good work. The letter looked great.
Glad you got it.
All right, any questions? I guess one question I have is when do you need the board members to say what they're contributing to the board match?
Yes, I'm hoping to get an email out to everyone. Yeah, this week it's gotten a little bit busier than anticipated. So I'm hoping to connect with each of you in the coming week. But if you could get that to us by the second week in November, that would be helpful so that we can include that information in the communication that we share with the larger community.
Perfect.
And if you need to know what you gave last year or anything like that, we can certainly help you with that.
What's the range? What has it been typically?
I mean, the collective board match has typically been about $10,000. But obviously everybody gets it.
Great. Any questions for Director Wright?
Do I count as the board? For this, probably not. Do I do a second?
What's the question?
You probably could. Yeah, Director Christensen was wondering if she counts in the board match. I think she could as ex officio member. All right. Diversity and Belonging Committee.
Yes, we did not have a meeting in October. Our next meeting will be on the 15th of November. We did have our first subcommittee meeting for the land acknowledgement statement on Tuesday. It was a very productive meeting. We had some new members join us. One of them is a kindergarten parent who has a PhD in the field, which really helps us. We really helps us. We have a timeline now. Our final goal is to have the board hopefully approve it in the spring. We have some steps to get to there. We still have to finalize our statement. We want some outside organization review it. Tyler Norris Taylor, that new member with the PhD in the field, she also offered to give a lecture to the school community to give context to the land acknowledgement statement, which we thought was a great idea. And then we'll show it to stakeholders and hopefully have the board approve it in the spring. I think that's all from me.
Excellent. It was a great meeting. And I'll just add that the BIPOC Affinity Group held the first annual camping adventure up at St. Croix State Park. Thanks to Wandy for spearheading that and organizing it. And
First
we had-
annual, she's committing you to doing it again. Huh?
Yeah. And we had perfect weather and had a lot of fun up there. So the next gathering for the BIPOC Affinity Group is a bowling outing November 12th, I believe, and that's at Goldie's Game Room at the U of M. Come one, come all. All right. Any questions about diversity and belonging? If not, we'll move on to communication and outreach. Director
Yeah, we
Miller.
didn't have a meeting in October, but there was another, contribution, which thank you, Katarina, to work on. I don't think if it is already out or it will come out at the beginning of November. I don't know. No, but there's our Next Innovation Award mentioned there. We have school tours and school tours announced and also openings that we have and an article about the exchange where the students went to Capital. And we also mentioned the event that the president talked about with Sir Thomas. There will be a meeting on Wednesday, the 9th of November at noon. And I just like to invite people to join. We will especially talk about the subcommittees and maybe if we have kind of a lot of subcommittees and advocacy, alumni relations, community outreach, recruitment, marketing plan, school mascot, volunteerism and engagement, and website analysis and updates. So if anybody also in the community is interested in takes
A lot of fun stuff. Thank you, Director Miller. Any questions on communication and outreach? All right, thank you for your work. The executive committee held our first meeting earlier this week, I think. It's all a blur.
Monday.
It was on Monday. And we heard updates from the Curriculum Advisory Committee, which is chaired by Dean Noy. And we heard updates from the SEEK Committee, the Special Education Advisory Council, which is chaired by Dr. Rowe, or is it Director Haugen? Dean Haugen?
It
Or
was Dr.
both?
Rowe who was there.
Right.
Oh,
I
but
thought she said
it's chaired by
he's
both of them.
chairing it.
Yeah,
Okay,
he ran the first one. Mhm.
perfect. So both of those are up and running, and the Curriculum Advisory Committee put an announcement in the brief today about the public session that is coming up. Do you want to speak to that,
Yeah.
Dr. Albers?
So once a year, there's a World's Best Workforce calendar meeting. It talks about what the goals are, what they're looking to do, of course, generate enrollment, or like people to join the Curriculum Advisory Committee. And that is set to be on Zoom on Monday, November 7th at 7. So most of, or all of that information is in the room brief, like Director Alcatute mentioned. So if you're interested in coming, please find us there. It's also in the calendars, internal and external.
And that's meant to be open to all community members, not just the committee members. So community can come with questions and thoughts, and it's a feedback session. So yeah, would love to hear from you. All right. We also spoke about the Wellness Committee, which is another committee in our policy and required by the state, I believe. So that'll be a work in progress to get that up and running at some point soon. And then we discussed the budget for this current year. Any questions about the executive committee? All right, and committee of the whole. Most of the discussion was focused on an award that was won by a parent, Director Hyde's wife, through Best Buy and their collaboration with Intel. Her team at Best Buy achieved certain benchmarks and won the grand prize. And they had named Twin Cities German Immersion School as one of the recipients of part of the prize, which was 7 Alienware computers. So those are gaming computers that look really high tech and cool and have a lot of computing power. And the monitors and cool gadgets that go with that. Like the headset and the mouse. And then a $5,000 cash check in addition to that. So given the amount of that award, we reviewed our policy on accepting gifts and determined that the fundraising committee needed to review that and vote whether the school should accept the award. If the fundraising committee deems it appropriate to accept the award, then it comes to the board, and the board would need 2/3 supermajority to approve that acceptance, because the overall award is valued at $25,000. So do you want to give an update, Dr. Reich, on your discussion?
Sure. So we, as a subcommittee, discussed the potential prize and whether the school should accept it. The conclusion that our committee came to was that we needed to understand the full terms and conditions of the gift to make sure that we can make an educated recommendation to the board, because the gift did not, the award did not come with an explicit understanding of what TCGIS would be expected to do following sign off on accepting the gift. So we have reached out to Intel a couple different times to just ask for that information, or to say that there are no expectations of the school once those gifts are awarded, but we are still waiting for a response, so the committee has not yet voted.
And it's noteworthy, I think, that administration during committee of the whole recommended against accepting the award. Do you want to speak to the reasons?
Mostly for security and implementation. Jesse Whitney, our tech, our IT specialist, is strongly not in favor of accepting them. They are Windows, and we are not a Windows school, so it would require setting up to use them in school setting would require setting up security issues. I'm clearly not the person to talk about tech issues, but he had concerns about that. We don't have a clear educational purpose for them. There's been some talk about them being able to be used in after school or summer programs, but part of the reason we need the terms and conditions is so that, you know, if we are not able to come up with something where we could use them, which would require volunteer time, we need to be able to know what our options are.
All right. And Director Hyde, I know you have information about it, since it is your wife who won the award. Did you want to speak to what you're envisioning?
What information do I have that the board isn't already aware of, or?
So I can say Jesse Hyde communicated directly to the board that in a verbal conversation, they indicated there are no terms or conditions, that it's an award, it's a gift, and the school can do anything that the school wants to with them. I think the only thing fundraising was looking for is that written down
From Intel.
from Intel. Yeah.
And I've been told that would be forthcoming earlier this week, but it has not.
We're supposed to have something by end of day Tuesday, right? There's.
Yeah. All right.
I think I recall them wanting an answer by the end of the month, so
It's in their
we're
hands at
probably
this
not gonna
point.
be able to hit that.
Well, it's in their hands at this point. I think fundraising could act quickly.
Yeah, we kind of agreed that we would just do a Zoom if we were able to get that document to review ahead of time. So the committee was prepared to kind of do a quick gathering to review.
Yeah,
if need be.
and I guess the only other information I have, Jesse reached out to Ricky, the Best Buy rep, not the Intel rep. Just to try to get an idea of where that is. I know that the first time when we asked for the terms and conditions, the Intel rep said that there is no terms and conditions, they do not exist, and that the Intel legal and accounting team was working on putting something together for us. So I'm guessing now that if it's the letter we want, that needs to go to the legal and accounting team at Intel again for their input on writing that. So it could probably take a little time.
We just basically said, if there are conditions, share the conditions with us. If there are no conditions, just share a letter with us saying that there are no conditions.
Yeah, but I'm sure like the Intel rep can't just write that up himself and send it out. Like it's got to get reviewed by legal compliance, accounting, and everything like that. So it'll probably take some time to get around.
All right. So
Getting
hopefully,
hold of corporate lawyers can be very hard.
so hopefully they have some patience with us as we wait for the information that we need. All right. Liaison updates. So we have a staff liaison, parent liaison, and administrative liaison.
As staff liaison, I have no update except I'll be attending the first all staff meeting next week on Wednesday and hope to get an update on the staff council at that meeting as well.
Perfect. Parent liaison. I know you've been out with some family things going on, but I think the parent council meets next week, is it?
I think
Or
it's
am
the
I-
7th.
Yeah, never mind.
I'm pretty sure it's the same night as Wells Best Workforce.
Okay. Are you on their distribution list? or
I
agendas?
have received a couple of emails,
Okay,
yes. And yeah, I was out, I have not attended the meetings, so I do not have that data.
all right, and administrative liaison, Director Dayton.
Director Christensen and I met earlier this month. And went over the director goals. We have our next meeting on the 7th of November. And we'll be talking about the mid-year review.
Sounds good. All right, any questions for the liaisons? All right. Is there any new business to bring before the board? All right, hearing none, make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Second.
All right. Thank you, Director Hyde.
Look at that, right on the nose.
Exactly at 9:30.
I know, right? All those in favor of adjourning, say aye.
Aye.
All right, thank you. Have a good night. Thank you for attending, everybody.